So we just released this morning a joint effort with the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii, a survey of the impact of COVID-19 on businesses and their employees. And in just a week, we collected responses from more than 600 businesses. And I want to thank Maui Chamber, Big Island Chamber, Kauai Chamber, and about a dozen business associations, Food Industry Association, the Restaurant Association, many others that helped us to get that kind of response, because the data that we gathered provides otherwise unavailable insight into the impact of the crisis by industry and by geography. And the industry level detail has been really useful to us. We're already using this to inform the forecast work that we're doing. And there's a number of interesting findings. I'll just briefly summarize them. The report's already on our website, and I assume the press releases have probably already gone out. The losses are exactly where you would think they would be, and they're quite large. So businesses reported reducing their workforce by about 220,000 full-time and part-time workers since January. And the hardest hit were accommodations, down 83%, retail businesses down 76%, arts and entertainment and recreation down 77%, food service and other services down more than 50%. So very much concentrated in tourism, but spread throughout the economy as well. And about a third of businesses reported that their revenues are essentially zero right now. And the good news is, there are some bright spots, is that many businesses did report that they expected to be able to reopen and staff up as soon as it was safe to do so. In fact, 60% of them said they could return to almost full staff immediately. The rest of their staff would then be phased in as tourism begins to return to the island. And this data is useful because it informs us, and as we begin to think about the recovery process. So the other thing that came out of the survey that is also not surprising at all, but it gives us some hard numbers. The most vulnerable workers, of course, are the ones that are being impacted the most. So part-time jobs were much more likely to have been lost than full-time jobs, and the lowest income workers were the most likely to have lost jobs. And so we report that in the online. It gives you the breakdown by income levels. And so what we're seeing is that ALICE families are impacted most directly, and that has long-ranging consequences for the need for supportive and social services and the need for state support in those areas. So what we're doing is we're using this data along with the hard numbers that we have on the initial unemployment claims that tell us that 175,000 initial claims for unemployment benefits have been filed through April 18th. And we're using that to estimate how big the job losses were in April, but also the effects of the PPP loans. So with the PPP loans to date, so we know how much has been, the 2.2 billion loans has already been made, and we'll build in any additional loans that we're able to obtain locally. And then we use that to estimate the prospects for recovery. We expect to release some of the story behind this and the assumptions later this week to give you an idea. The combination of PPP loans and importantly, opening up the local economy when it's safe to do so, we assume end of May. It's an assumption that will change as conditions change. But what we find is that we could see 40 to 50% of the jobs that have been lost so far return through May and June. So we're talking about around 90,000 jobs. And by the end of the year, we could see jobs return closer to 80% of the lost jobs. And all of this, of course, depends on the assumptions about how the virus progresses. But the key thing is that the work that we're doing, the discussions of these plans for the tourism industry and plans for how we're going to reopen our local economy are incredibly important because of the long-term health consequences and long-term social consequences of maintaining such a high level of unemployment. And so the initial estimates that we're coming up with are somewhat encouraging that we're going to be able to get back 40 to 50% of the job losses relatively quickly. And that's all I have. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions or comments?
Speaker Seki, this is Lisa Mariano from Hano. I do have a question for Carl.
Okay.
Thank you. Carl, I'm just wondering if, I guess I'm wondering is, we knew that over 50% in Hawaii were Alice families before COVID. And I'm just wondering if you had some kind of metric to measure how many of these businesses are actually now Alice families during COVID. I would imagine it skyrocketed, but I was just wondering if you had a number on that.
So I think the question, I couldn't quite catch the whole question because of audio problems, but I think you're basically asking, can we come up with an estimate for the increase in number of Alice families because of the crisis?
Yes.
And I think the answer to that is yes. So without the survey, the answer would have been no, and that's one of the reasons that we pursued the survey. But I think we can get that, and I think Phil Garbodin can probably. He's the one who worked on the survey. Excuse me. And it's one of the reasons we did it. So hopefully we will be able to come up with some numbers soon.